a storm cloud.
Whoa, you're a storm cloud. That's so cool. Whoa.
Hey, I'm a storm cloud, Burp. Woo! You don't want to mess with me. I can mess you up. I can mess you up, cub. You don't want to see that happen. You don't want to see that happen, man.
No, don't do that. Don't do it.
Hey, you. Hey, you over there. You know what? Fuck you. Bang! There goes your power. Bang! There goes the storm surge. Your computer doesn't work now, bitch. Haha. Good luck with that, bitch. Oh! Goodbye. Woo!
So you probably weren't wondering where I was for the past week or so. Now, boy, do I have a story for you. Normally, when there's a power outage and then the powers goes out and then the powers goes back on. But this time the power decided to go on really fast and with a lot of more power than the power usually goes on with. As a result, computer brokey. Computer kicked the bucket for a little bit. Normally there's a switch on the back of my computer that when I switch it, all the lights go on. So I flip the switch on the back and then nothing happens. The lights don't go on, the thing doesn't work, no booping beeping sound, and nothing. I press the power button and zero happened again. I look up what go wrong in computer, and it says basically the four things that storm surge can affect is the power supply in the bottom of the computer, the motherboard, CPU, SSD. So those are four main things that I have to worry about right now. And I recently bought a new CPU for my computer so that editing would be faster, and oh boy did it work good, so I didn't want the CPU to go bad. I didn't worry about that. I said I'll just pretend like it's not the CPU, because if the CPU is bad, at least the lights would turn on. So I figure out what's wrong with the lights. Well, there's no power going to the lights, so that means it's either the power supply, which is powering the lights, or it's the motherboard, which is the way that the lights know they're supposed to be powered. Since I live in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, the closest place to me that has any semblance of civilization is basically a town with a Walmart and a Denny's, and that's pretty much it. So I had to drive an hour and a half to go get a power supply and a motherboard from Best Buy. I was really hoping that it was going to be the power supply that was bad, and then I didn't have to mess with the motherboard, because the power supply is fairly easy to replace. All right, you unplug a few things and then plug in a few things. It's basically just a box with a bunch of wires coming out of it, and then you just plug in the wires. I drive back hour and a half each way, by the way. Not an hour and a half total, hour and a half each way. So it's like 3 hours to Best Buy and back to my wonderful abode. And then I go into my computer and I unplug all the stuff from the power supply and plug it all back in, and then I flip the switch and nothing happens. That means I have to replace the motherboard, which means I have to rebuild the computer from scratch, which is not good because I've never built a computer. I have to look up an 11-minute YouTube video. I look at the 11-minute YouTube video and I'm thinking, hey, that's not too bad. 11 minutes I can muster, you know, I can squeeze 11 minutes of work out of myself to replace the motherboard on my computer. I was watching that 11-minute YouTube video for 6 hours. Over the course of 2 days. So it took a little bit more than 11 minutes. Whoever the hell built this computer decided they needed to zip tie every single wire in the most convoluted and useless ways they could. They zip tied one of the single wires just to the side of the case, to one of the vents. The tightest zip tie you could even imagine that you couldn't even possibly get out without cutting the wire. So I got that off by like cutting the actual knob of the zip tie, the part that zips the tie together, you know, the little square hole that you put this thing in, and then it secures it. That part I had to like cut that in half. Had to do that about 5 more times, and that doesn't mean that the cable management was like perfect. You take the back of the computer off and then you see all these cables and it looks pretty neat, right? There's like 2 lines of cables all zip tied neatly together, and then you start pulling them out and they're just all shoved into where the hard drive is. In the same like place that you would put another hard drive is just a fuck ton of cables just jammed in there. So you take those all out and then it's just a big jumble of cables that you don't know what the hell to do with. I have to figure out what cables are what and sort them out, and then you have to take everything off of the old motherboard. Okay, you have to unplug literally every wire that's plugged in there. Then I have to put everything back into the new motherboard. Oh baby, that's a little bit of a task because the wires are barely labeled. A lot of them aren't labeled at all. I have to figure out where those goes, and then I have 2 like extra wires that are just sitting there. 3 actually. I had 3 unconnected cables that just aren't connected to anything. I'm going through this process and I'm like, where the hell did these come from? from because they're not coming from anywhere and they're not going to anywhere. So I figured out those are actually the adapters because there's too many fans for the fan ports and they're in weird places so they don't reach the fan plugins where you're supposed to put them on the motherboard. So I have to connect all of those fans into the single wire and then I plug it into the motherboard. What now? Something's wrong. I have 2 more wires. So the fans don't even go into the right plug on the motherboard. You have to use a little adapter to put the adapter to the fans in that you put in the motherboard. Then after that, then you have to do the lighting for the fans. And because if the fans weren't complicated enough themselves. So you take the lighting for the fans and you take the little lights and you put them all in another one of those adapters that I didn't know I was going, but now I've used all 3 of the adapters so I know what they do. I put all the lights in that single adapter and plugged them into the motherboard. Oh wait, what's this? There's a cable hanging down from the top of the case that doesn't even go into anywhere and it's the same cable that's an input for the lights. What does that mean? Well, I plug that into the light thing and then I don't even take anything out of the computer, alright? I just put all the computer stuff hanging out of the side of the computer, alright? The guts are falling out and everything. I just want to know if this thing works. I turn the backflip switch on, nothing happens. That's not good because I'm using the old power supply because I want to know if it works. If it does work, then I don't have to spend an extra $90 on a new power supply. But just to be safe, I press the power button. Maybe the lights aren't working, it was only the lights. Nothing happens. 2 seconds later, whoop, the computer turns on. What the hell is going on? Alright, the computer is on. The lights are on too. I was flabbergasted at that. I thought I absolutely messed that up. I pressed the little LED button. There's a little LED button to change the color of the lights. Before the computer brokey, the lights, you press that and it's just a one strip on the front of the case that changes. That's the only thing that changes. This time it's the 2 fans on the back of the case that are changing. Turns out the little light plug-in that was hanging from the top of the case is connected to that little LED connector looking thing, and that controls all the lights. Turned it off. Didn't want to worry about it. I wanted to get the lights right first because, you know, I have my priorities set straight. Computer working, fuck that. I want the lights to work right. So I unplug everything, take that little cable and plug it into the same adapter that everything else is plugged into. Turn the PC on. The lights work. I literally rewired the lighting better than the people who built my computer. Anyways, the lights now work. The computer's on. It boots up to the BIOS. The computer is functioning, but I can't do anything on it. Guess I have to get an SSD. So I get the SSD. I got an SSD from Walmart. All right, 1 terabyte SSD. My old one was like 100 gigabytes. Put the SSD in the computer. It like clicks a little more than the other SSD. Oh, that's strange. Why is it inserting better than the other SSD? And now I'm thinking, hold on a second. Maybe I just didn't install the first SSD right. Put the computer back on the ground. Tear the SSD out. Put the other one in correctly this time. Screw it in with a little crappy, tiny little baby goober screw. Turn the computer on. It works. Like perfect. I don't even have to open the BIOS. I don't have to install anything. It just works like it did. Now I could be done. I have my computer back. Everything works again. No, I'm an idiot, so I decide I have a brand new empty 1 terabyte SSD. So I rip that one out again, shut the computer off, put it on the ground, rip the SSD out, put the other SSD in. Turns out I have to install Windows on the computer. I go get a crappy old laptop that I had somewhere. I didn't have a flash drive, so I had to put an SD card in an SD card reader and plug that into the computer and use that as a flash drive. Download Windows onto that, come back to this computer, plug that into the computer, and then try to install that. That's not too bad. Installing Windows is actually pretty easy. But guess what? Old computer came with Windows since it was pre-built. Now, I didn't know this, but you have to activate Windows. Okay, how do I activate Windows? It costs $200. It costs $200 to activate Windows. Considering that instead of buying a new computer, I went and drove like 3 hours to a Best Buy to get 2 parts that may have a chance at fixing my computer, I'm not going to pay $200 fucking dollars to customize my Windows experience. Fuck you, Windows. I'm gonna embrace light mode, but there's an activate Windows watermark in the bottom right, which is really annoying. Just in case you care about me so much that you were wondering where the hell I was for the past 13 days, I was fixing my computer that the lightning decided shouldn't work. And now I fixed it. And everything should be fine unless something wild and wacky happens.